must say that returning to Washington today really brought back memories. As our plane headed toward the airport, I looked down on the White House, and it was just like the good old days. The Rose Garden, the South Lawn, David Gergen. I looked over a couple of blocks, and there was the Internal Revenue Service, bigger than I ever remembered it.
Former President Reagan making his final public speech at the Republican National Committee's annual gala in February of 1994. Not only was the event a tribute to Ronald Reagan, it was also a celebration of the Gepper's 83rd birthday. But 9 months after that speech, President Reagan wrote a letter to the American people revealing that he had Alzheimer's disease.
And for more, let's bring in best-selling Reagan biographer Craig Shirley. Craig's latest book is coming out this fall on Reagan's post-presidency days and is titled Last Act: The Final Years and Emerging Legacy of Ronald Reagan. Craig is also the founder of Shirley and Bannister Public Affairs. Thank you so much for joining us here on Newsmax Prime. Always good to have you.
And Craig, as it's great to have you, sir. You have done so much research, and you're known in Washington as the go-to guy on Ronald Reagan, Craig. So is there anything, when you were researching this book, that surprised you about President Reagan?
Yeah, JD, I guess what surprised me was, and you probably recall, you and Miranda recall, but what I'd forgotten was the amount of vitriol that was aimed at Ronald Reagan, even during the week of his funeral. You know, he'd put up with this his whole life with liberal and left-wing and Democratic opponents from the 50s through the governorship, through his presidential campaigns, and even to his post-presidency. There was a lot of angst and anguish and anger aimed at him, unjustified in many examples, aimed at him, even the week of his funeral. What was interesting is that as the week progressed, the more the American people turned out, the more the elites became silent and muted, as if the American people were pushing back and they didn't want to hear the criticism. There were a lot of other things, too, like, for instance, Reagan tried to reach out to John Hinckley after, and this has not been reported before, but it's in my book. He tried to reach out to John Hinckley several months after the shooting and wanted to meet with him and tell the young man that he forgave him. He was talked out of it, but it was something that he wanted to do very much.
Wow, that is so shocking to hear that. That says a lot about his character, don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely, Miranda. I mean, that speaks volumes about his Christian ability for forgiveness. And he would have done so, but interestingly enough, Hinckley had 6 different psychiatrists, and they advised Reagan that Hinckley was the most self-absorbed patient they'd ever seen in their lives, and for Reagan to meet with him would have been vindicating to Hinckley. It would have sent a message to him that what he had done was justified, and that they all it would just drive him deeper into psychosis. So that's why, not because, you know, fear of Reagan's life or anything else, but simply because Hinckley would have reacted badly to the overture.
Craig, you mentioned the vitriol toward President Reagan. When I was serving in Congress, I tried to put together a movement to put President Reagan's image on the $10 bill following his death, and could never find not a single Democrat co-sponsor. Why do you think that is? Yeah.
Oh, I just think that Reagan engenders many feelings in many people among clear-thinking Democrats who are Americans first. They have nothing but fondness and respect for Ronald Reagan and for his 8 years of office and for his conduct in after the presidency. But there are partisan liberals out there who just can't get beyond their overt partisanship and who see everything through that prism. So, and I remember you doing that at the time, and I wrote about it in the book. But it was just something that couldn't get done because of Democratic partisan opposition.
We only have about 25 seconds remaining. What do you think will be Reagan's legacy?
Three things, Miranda. The restoration of the American spirit and morale, which he considered his most important accomplishment, the defeat of Soviet communism, and the restoration of the American economy, in which he created 20 million new jobs. So I think that he himself said those were his three greatest accomplishments. But there were many others, obviously, as well.
And you can read about them in Last Act, The Final Years and Emerging Legacy of Ronald Reagan. Craig Shirley, we thank you for your time and for your insights on our 40th president. Now, you heard what Craig had to say. What are your memories of Reagan and his passing? Why don't you write us? Newsmaxtv.com/comments is the good place to send your comments. And there's more Newsmax Prime after this.